Today, we will begin the discussion with the water pollutants. Water pollutants, as you know, is one of the major causes of health related problems, health and welfare related problem facing the mankind today. Water is becoming a very precious commodity. I mean, in the sense that, in a global sense, water is perhaps becoming as precious as the other commodities that we know of, say fuel, oil, or any other thing, solid fuels, oils and things like that. There are many contentious issues with water, as we have already told you in some of the classes. Now, apart from that, this water pollutants, in the water field of water pollutants, we would be mostly concerned about hydrosphere. This is hydrosphere is to explain this. The hydrosphere is the parts of the earth where where there is a presence of water, where there is a presence of water. So, here this one is, if we just try to begin discussion by this, this is hydrosphere, which would be mostly related to us, and in that we would be mostly interested in two aspects of water. I mean, the sources of water on the earth. One is popularly known as surface water. Surface water are these rivers, streams, ponds, lakes, etc. And we will be also interested in the groundwater, the water that is not generally observed, seen on the surface, except there is an arrangement to bring them out. All right. Now, so this groundwater is another area, mostly the water locked in the underground strata, or below surface stratum. So, these two are becoming most important for us. We will discuss mostly about these two, the importance, effects on different pollutants on these two. Now, to explain generally the influence of this, how these pollutants actually reach from one place to another, we will just begin this discussion where we would say that okay. Anyway, let us with this finally what we try to see here is, say this can be explained, this is how water essentially impacts the food chain. This is the food chain. In a water has how the effects of pollutants in the water has actually affected the number of food chain and food chain disruptions. What is happening here is, this is, if you just see this is where mostly the microbial population, then this the other insects and other smaller organisms, then finally is the fish, fish or vegetative population, vegetative population, and then finally is this the larger mammals like humans, say the predators like the typical predators that lions, tiger, all these remaining at the top of the food chain. What is happening is, in most cases, the pollutants, this is at every stage there is an increase. So there is an increase. So if you just see the concentration rising, this is say C1 milligram per liter, C2 milligram per liter, C3 milligram per liter. If you just observe, and C4 milligram per liter, we would observe that C4 being always more than C3, more than C2, and more than C1. This is how the concentration actually is increasing in the food chain. This would result in few other things. Few other things is, one of them is, it is apart from this traveling in the food chain, the contaminants and the pollutants moving up in the food chain, they would also have two important effects. Number one is that food chain contamination, and also food chain contamination and food chain disruption. Food chain contamination and food chain disruption. The typical food chain contamination we will all try to observe is the fishes, the the vegetables that particularly these are some of the sources which are actually getting affected due to the progression of a different concentration of pollutants up in the food chain, right. This is a contamination taking place. You just try to understand this is almost all fishes, almost all the meat, or almost all vegetables that we eat today, there is a considerable degree of insecticides sprayed on them. There will be a considerable degree of other pollutants, the particularly the pesticides, insecticides, then rodenticides, all kind of the highly resilient organic compounds and some other organic inorganic compounds also, combine them together, remain there as move up in the food chain and finally come to our food. It's not the question of only our food or the food population, the population that humans eat, but at the same time we can see this is what would be simultaneously going to affect different kind of populations also other than humans. It's not only a case that that the humans would be affected. There will be many other organisms, many other living beings, many other bioorganic populations would be impacted by this. Excuse me. Now, this is one aspect without harming. What is this food chain contamination that we finally most famously know about? DDT is a food chain contaminant. What is actually progressing up in the food chain and remaining there. There are DDT, there are many other insecticides that we generally know of. This is didrine and many others. The food chain disruption. The food chain disruption is another aspect where I would also explain this. The food chain disruption is, suppose a food chain disruption would make a particular population to almost be suffering so much that it would not begin to exist anymore. say a certain kind of population so sensitive to the pollutants that it would not begin to survive in that environment at all. So, what would happen is, if inevitably, if you can see the food chain, a part of in the food chain, in the food pyramid, the pyramid that I have drawn here, you would see that this is vanishing completely. So, as a result of which, what would happen is that there would be a disruption in the food chain, and disruption would lead to a decrease in a certain kind of population of fishes, certain kind of population of other living organisms, which are say something like say any other organisms like the goats, the cows, the kind of the population which might also serve us. So, here, so you can see this is what is is related to the food chain disruption. So, these two aspects are extremely impacting our life. They have serious consequences in our life. This food chain disruption would, as you can see, extinction or a part or removal. We can say a removal of extinction or removal of a certain population, certain population of organisms, right. So, we can see this, is we are trying to observe this as a, when we are trying to see this as a food chain contamination and food chain disruption, we can see this taking place, the removal of certain population of organisms. Now, having come to this, let us now begin to classify the different kinds of water pollutants. To now name the different kind of water pollutants, the first thing that comes to one's mind is that of oxygen demanding wastes. Oxygen demanding wastes, number 1. Say this primarily organic and also biochemical in nature, primarily organic and biochemical in nature. The way this category of waste, this category of waste will include this category of waste will include some inorganic substances as well, waiting to be oxidized in the water, waiting to be oxidized in the water. Now, this waiting to be oxidized, is something like this, is here what is, unless they demand oxygen, the oxygen in the water should not deplete. This is the most important fundamental thing, that it's not necessarily that if certain kind of reactions are not going to take place which would involve oxygen, which would consume oxygen, the oxygen is not going to deplete in water. Let me give you simple examples, like if you just take 3 beakers, in each of these 3 beakers if you just put different kind of wastes, like typical wastes that would be that will be a typical type of wastes that would be handling generally. Say something like if you take a 3 beakers and if you just fill in with water, and then you say this is in this case you just fill in with water, and then on the similar quantity of water, then you put in, as you can see if you just put sugar in this, say mostly the sugar, if you have added sugar in this, or if you have added any other biochemical wastes, like a typical biochemical waste may be a typical biochemical waste may be any time of, say, leaf remains, say animal remains, etc., abnormal remains, etc. If you just put them in this, and if you just say this is say something like this, so you can just put in things like this, and also you are putting sugar, or you are putting any other carbohydrates, for that matter, any other simpler carbohydrates, and also if you just putting in, say, a highly a salt, say if you are putting in NaCl here, say salt here in this solution, if you are mixing salt, and if you are just mixing salt here, similarly if you are just putting in, say, a plastic or PVC kind of substances here, the plastic or PVC or any kind of substances here. So this is basically a substance which you have, which would mostly lead to for our case we will consider them as biochemical wastes. This is an, say, inorganic waste. This is, say, consider this to be an inorganic waste, and this is say a polyhydrocarbon waste. So you can see this is a polyhydrocarbon waste. If you just consider this, after, say, this is one day, this is the day 1 of the experiment, if you just consider this day 2 of the day, say 4 of the experiment, day 4 of the experiment, you would see that the oxygen level here, the oxygen level in the water, dissolved oxygen present in this water, say, is going down like this. Depending on the waste characteristics, it would begin to deplete like this, whereas here you would find a perhaps if you just start with the same level of oxygen, we would just observe maybe almost the same level of oxygen remaining there, the oxygen not getting displaced. The oxygen not getting displaced, the oxygen level remains same. Say it's a day 1 and day 4. This is day 1, and day 4. Day 1 and day 4 would be same. Similarly, day 1 and day 4. So here you can see this is oxygen level, oxygen in water. This is with time. This is oxygen time that I have said, and also if you can just think of, say, similarly of the plastic or the PVC waste, you will also see that this plastic or PVC waste will also not deplete any base just because they are not biodegradable. So you see the microorganisms or any other things would not be able to decompose in water in a very short time, in a relatively very short time. We will observe that here also in the day 1 and day 4 the oxygen level would continues to remain same. So if it is a biochemical waste, or is a basically a primary hydrocarbon or a simple carbohydrate being mixed with the water in some quantity, we would observe that this would be The reason being is that there would be a depletion in the level of oxygen. This depletion in the level of oxygen, this depletion in the level of oxygen is due to the oxygen demanding reactions that would take place, the oxygen demanding reactions that would take place. So, you can see here, if you just observe it, right in the terms of the hydrocarbons, simple hydrocarbons, and if you just observe this like this with the help of these microorganisms, and there may be another say any other agent like light of say in the source of in the presence of sunlight or any other agent would observe that this one would lead into CO2 forming. This would form H2O. There would be certain other gases, this can be a variety of gases that would be formed over time. If it is over time, on the 5th day, if you just see, you will find also some kind of nitrogen also being formed, or nitrogen dioxides, the nitrogenous compounds plus some other stable products. This is what we are going to expect. So, you can see this demand, this is where the oxygen would be actually taken off. This is known as, these wastes would be known as oxygen demanding wastes. These wastes would be known as the oxygen demanding wastes. So, this oxygen demanding wastes, for our simple definition here, the oxygen demanding wastes are primarily of biochemical origin, that is this human, animal excreta, then carcass, that is the typical body of say the dead bodies, carcass, so dead bodies, fallen leaves. So, what this why this and is coming up in the top is this this is where the starting of the environmental concerns begin. Actually, this this biochemical origin, this typical, when the cities begin to develop, sewage become a problem. Sewage is the all kind of human wastes. So, the management of human waste became a problem, and this primarily when wherever this the animal or human remains, or their feces or feces, or say the excreta came in contact with water, the water begin to be polluted. When you say the polluted, what I mean to say here is there would be two kind of situation here. One is the depletion of oxygen. Another is the growth of microorganisms. These two things are extremely important in case of drinking water. Essentially, what the water we would drink necessarily should have a very little number of microorganisms. It should not have a high level of microorganisms, as well as it should not have a very reduced level of oxygen, because there are this increased oxygen is required for our different metabolical reasons. For different metabolism purposes, we require this oxygen, and this, as you can see. At the same time, let me also explain that the oxygen, as I have might have said in some classes that oxygen is not very highly dissolvable in water. It's in fact feebly dissolvable in water. The level of oxygen in under STP, standard temperature pressure, is between the level that we generally find is the oxygen level can go down to 0. It can rise up to say 15 milligram per liter. This is the range in which oxygen would remain in water. This is not sufficient, not a very high range, as you can observe. 15 milligram per liter would be the oxygen, but this range becomes extremely critical for the health and welfare of not only human populations, but also of several major populations of fishes, smaller animals, larger animals altogether. So, this is what this is how this oxygen depleting substances essentially deplete oxygen from the water, and as a result of which it can lead to a different degrees of contamination. Okay. Now, having said this, we will come back to this discussion again, but let me move forward on this. Another important thing is another important thing that I want to mention here is, if you see this, if the level of oxygen in water, decreases more than say 4 milligram per liter, decreases more than or say decreases less to the level below 4 milligram per liter, that is the water level, the oxygen level in water becoming say 3, 2 like this. In such cases, majority of large fish population would not be able to survive. And if this water is generally consumed by a human population as well, we would observe a certain kind of prevalence of certain kinds of diseases, like that is say the gastroenteric diseases, say typically like dysentery, then diarrhea, or any other amiable diseases that can be associated with water. So, this is the level of oxygen is critical. Secondly, another important part is that, as I have said, the level of oxygen needs to be high, because this oxygen also helps us in the metabolism. So, it is required that some of the higher level of oxygen is generally supplied. So, the drinking water or the water in the pond or wherever, the oxygen level in the water, if goes down below a certain level, there will not be any other organisms would begin to survive. And not only that, in most cases when a large population, that is what is also a food chain disruption, a chain disruption that I am saying. Say if the large fishes are say decreasing in number in a particular water environment, what would essentially mean is there will be certain populations of insects on which the fishes prey on, they would also increase in number. So, as a result of which you will find unwanted population of insects, microorganisms, other microorganisms, the ciliated microorganisms all of them, the population of them increasing in water. So, this is where the oxygen demanding wastes are extremely important to understand why this oxygen level actually goes down in water. We have seen that how this mechanism of oxygen getting down, the level of oxygen going down in water. This is one aspect, this is about this oxygen demanding wastes. We would also begin to start another different kind of water pollutants, and that is about this this is the pathogens. Pathogens are known as the disease causing microorganisms. The pathogens are essentially not pollutants themselves, but they have a cause and effect relationship with the pollutants. Like if the oxygen level is going down, and if the concentration of wastes in the water increase, the population of pathogens also increase. So, the pathogens has a cause and effect relationship. So, the cause is a pollutant, and the effect is a pathogen. Effect is a number of pathogens. But since the importance of pathogens are so high, the importance of pathogens are so important that they can be categorized as a pollutant. But essentially, as I have said, pathogens are always there. I mean, in a natural environment, you will always find organisms which are not so friendly to our living system, which are not essentially very friendly to our living system, but nonetheless, when their concentration remains under control, they are not actually very disruptive, they are not actually causing any diseases. Like as you can see, these microorganisms, mostly the microorganisms we are talking about, these microorganisms are they are everywhere. In fact, the microorganisms are basically the reasons of the evolution of the total living kind. So, the microorganisms are everywhere. You can just go, finally you can find in the ionosphere also, somewhere in the 20-30 kilometers above the surface of the earth, as well as you will find in deep sea trenches, which are say about 5 to 10 kilometers below the surface of the sea water. So, you can see the wide range, they are remaining in different, they are extremely competitive organism, which can given chance, given opportunity, they would be essentially able to increase their numbers. They are able to increase their numbers with such a rapidity, so much of ferocity that it can cause disruptions at a very early time. At a very early time that can cause disruptions. So, this is where the pathogens are extremely important, in the sense that whenever there is a certain pollutant, going into a particularly organic or inorganic pollutant, which serves as a pollutant that serves as a, you can write, that serves as a nutrient or food, essential nutrient or food, would give rise to the increase in the number of pathogens. Just to try to give a small example here, say during in your halls, you will find particularly during the time of say rainy season, when the incidence of say digestive diseases, digestive problems begin to increase. One of the major reason is the water, the water pipes generally being over flooded at points, due to water. This water, the water may supply the microorganisms to enter into the flow channel of the water, as a result of which the number of pathogens increasing, the concentration of pathogens in the water might increase so much that it would be able to disrupt the bodily resistance. It will be able to disrupt the resistance of the body and can result into various kind of digestive diseases. So, and similarly, when the water level is low, particularly water level is low in say in a particular reservoir or a particular particular stream or anywhere, the nutrient level becomes so high, the nutrient level in that water becomes so high, the water becomes so much mineralized that can also invite a higher incidence of microbial population. So, in two cases the microbial population would be able to disrupt the life, and there are several kind of diseases that we are generally known of. In fact, with the understanding of with these pathogens only, the environmental engineering as such started when Dr. John Snow first found in 1849 and first corroborated that microorganisms are the causes of various human disease. You can say that about this time only, people began to be aware, or the birth of environmental science has taken place. About this time, remember this, it is not only 1849, it is about only 150 years from now. Only 150 years back, people first got the idea that the microorganisms can cause different kind of diseases. All right. Now, this is to suggest that till before that time, for all kind of diseases people used to have, or all kind of problems their life they used to have that can relate to diseases, they had an idea that is basically supernatural, and it's because of a certain godly act that they suffer. But only at about this time 1849 first, the microorganisms were first identified as the causes of various human diseases, particularly the digestive diseases. So, here again, as I have said, the pathogens, as I have said, they are extremely competitive in nature. These pathogens are mostly we would describe in the 4 groups. These pathogens are they are mostly this virus, bacteria, protozoa and fungi. Virus, bacteria, protozoa and fungi. So, these are basically known as the disease causing pathogens. These are disease causing pathogens that are generally related. Many of them are related to water. So, this is particularly the disease causing microorganisms. This should be, when we are dealing with this is the mostly this four group, and their variates. Some of them have an protozoa and fungi, they have some pathogens might have a property which have a common of something of fungi, something of protozoa, something will have something of protozoa, something of bacteria. So, this kind of things, the variates also, these are the pathogens which are related to the different kind of diseases. So, here again, just to give some kind of idea, here you can see that there are many kind of diseases that we would just generally, there are three kind of diseases that we generally relate to. This is one is this, they are their pathogens related is waterborne pathogens, the pathogens which are generally waterborne, then water contact and water hygiene. So, this waterborne, water contact, water hygiene, these are the mostly say the pathogens, say this they are carried by water, they are generally carried by water, they are washing hands, food through washing hands, food, say utensils, by these actions related to these things, they spread, and these pathogens can result into the different kind of diseases, like some of them can be related to diarrheal diseases, and then guinea worm, right. These are the typical diseases that over 10 million children under 5, over 10 million children under 5 years of age die because of waterborne diseases every year. More than 50 million children, die because of the diseases related to guinea worms, below 5 years of age in different part of the world, mostly in the countries like South Asia, then South America, Africa, sub-Saharan Africa. In all those places, these waterborne diseases take away almost about 50 to 60 million children every year, and many of them becoming affected and then finally perishing to that. So, this is a relatively very high figure. This is what we can see. These water contact diseases are this is the invertebrates existing in water, mostly invertebrates, this like schistosomiasis. There is the kind of diseases like that are generally related to schistosomiasis, cysts, leptospirosis, leptospirosis. These are the typical this cyst like diseases. They are generally invertebrates, like they are of different forms. Schistosomiasis is basically a very painful disease, which is a painful and very nagging kind of diseases, where the skins and different parts of the body getting affected by the large worms. It's not basically the small pathogens, is basically the invertebrates would be ciliated organic cells, ciliated living cells. These ciliated living cells can be extremely pervasive. They can reach to various kind of the body, various parts of the body by different transport mechanism in the body, and can remain there and can be extremely painful and irritating. Over 200 million people throughout the world are affected by this kind of diseases. 200 million people extremely are related to this kind of diseases. We also find an water hygiene kind of related diseases connected with this, with the skin diseases, all kind of skin diseases. You can say, right, you can write here skin diseases, water hygiene related, that is short of water. Water hygiene is short of water, short of water. These two are basically related to short of water uses. Say, this is water hygiene related diseases are like which you are going to have if you are not taking bath, say, for 30 days. The kind of diseases that you are just going to have in case you are not taking the bath for, say, about 30 days. So, like this, there are many kind of diseases. They have skin diseases, very eye diseases also, eye diseases, tracheoma, is eye diseases, conjunctivitis, that is a typical conjunctivitis disease, as you know, during the time of say a heavy monsoon and also a very hot climate. In such situation and in the presence of various garbages, you will find that this kind of diseases actually originate, and it can be related about, say, this particular diseases can be about 500 million people. 500 million people are affected by these water hygiene related diseases. Water hygiene related diseases. So, this is what is the one of the major kind of as I have said, the pathogens are essentially has a cause and effect relationship with the pollutants. Wherever, say, the water is short in supply or water is polluted, in such situations the pathogens generally multiply, and the pathogens can cause to various physiological disturbances, various kinds of physiological disturbances to animals and human beings. So, here this is about this, the next thing is nutrient. Nutrients. The third one is the nutrient. What is a nutrient? The nutrients are here is cases, here is in all cases the nutrients should be mostly related the substances, the primarily inorganic, the inorganic and organic substances, the inorganic and organic substances generally in the elemental form, elemental form of, say, just like calcium, magnesium, then iron, then all kind of elemental form that we generally would be taken by taken by the microorganisms, this calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, boron, all kind of substances. These elemental nutrients, these are the elemental nutrients. They are necessary for the matrix, and say this the necessary for the preparation of fluids in the microbial cells. Preparation of the fluids in the microbial cells and leading them to grow. When they are in huge supply, when there is a great supply of nutrients in the water, or when the water level has gone down so much that the concentration of nutrient has increased. Earlier, say that this particularly takes place during the summer time. You see, observe the ponds, this during the summer time, when you will observe that the water level has gone down. As the water level has gone down, in such cases the water is basically rich in very high nutrients. All these nutrients should be in great supply. This results in what is the most important thing about this is, this results in the blooming of the algae. This is blooming of the algae. This algae or it is called as the algal bloom. The algal bloom. This algal bloom drives away. This has an impact. This basically takes place because of the very high concentration of nutrients and rich nutrients. High concentration and rich nutrients. In the nutrients also have to be very rich, in the sense of in the balanced proportion of all these elemental ions or elemental substances. This can be in the presence of, remember, all this in the presence of certain carbonates, bicarbonates, sulfates, sulfides, and things like that. So here this algal bloom, which would lead to this algal bloom, would reduce the oxygen level, because this algae for their photosynthesis would take away oxygen, and also, and as a result of which, as this algal bloom would take place, they would drive away all other organisms in the water. So particularly the algal bloom, if you have observed, if you just go near a stream or a small stream or a typical say channel where water has been stuck for quite some time, and you will find that the water looks greenish. The water looks particularly quite greenish, and if you see if you just take a note, you will find that there are a huge algal population being present just below the surface of the water or just above. Some of them may be observed at the top, but most of them would be at the below. This is called, this water is almost stripped of oxygen. This water would mean that this algae just because for their different photosynthesis purpose would also photosynthesis or for their own consumption, for own respiration, they would consume high level of oxygen. This oxygen would lead to the reduction in the level of oxygen in the water. This particular phenomena is known as eutrophication. Eutrophication, and such water would be characterized by high color, turbidity, odors, etc. This is one major problem throughout the world, eutrophication. Whenever the water level goes down, or the algal population suddenly finds enriched level of nutrients also added with the micronutrients, in such cases their population begins to increase in such a rapid manner that it would stripe off all oxygen, it would drive away all other organisms, that the fishes would not be able to survive in that environment. Then you will find that the other many other higher microbial population would not be able to survive, and in such cases the water would be completely devoid of oxygen, and this water can result in different kind of diseases and different kind of disruptions, and particularly is a major problem throughout the world. Wherever there is a construction, there is a mining activity, there is any kind of suddenly leading to agricultural activity, this eutrophication is a major problem now, because in many cases the enriched nutrients result into the sudden depletion of oxygen in the water, which can result into algal bloom. This algal bloom would finally lead to eutrophication. Okay. We will stop here. We will again start this. We will begin this discussion with this water pollutants 2, in which we will further discuss on these topics, right. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so we start the discussion on where we left yesterday, that is about the nutrients. The nutrients that I was also explaining you about what are the different types of nutrients and what are their implications, like eutrophication that I discussed with you. Now, as you can see, these nutrients this can be coming from both the nutrients. If you just write like this, nutrients come from different sources, like organic, or say biochemical sources.